It begins with a smell. You notice it first thing in the morning, stepping out onto a balcony in Mississauga, or waiting for a streetcar on Queen Street West. A faint, misplaced campfire. A barbecue where no barbecue should be. You dismiss it, but by noon, you can't. The smell has a texture now. It's acrid, resinous, the unmistakable scent of a burning world. Delivered on a southerly breeze that should be bringing clean air off the lake. By 3 p.m., the sky over Toronto is no longer blue. It's a hazy, sickly yellow-orange, a bruised peach of an atmosphere that swallows the top of the CN Tower. The sun is a pale, red disk. Your phone buzzes. Then it buzzes again. It's a special air quality statement from Environment Canada. It uses words like high levels of air pollution and elevated values. It advises you to take it easy. What it doesn't tell you is the one number that actually matters. And it doesn't tell you that this isn't an event. This is an arrival. The fires are not at the city's edge. They are hundreds of kilometers away. A sprawling, interconnected front of violent combustion stretching across the Canadian Shield. Look at the map. The official map from Ontario's Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. It's a rash of red icons, each one a life of its own. There's Timmins 73, a beast devouring the boreal forest northwest of the city, now over 100,000 hectares. There's Sudbury 58 and Sudbury 61, two fires that are about to merge into a single, uncontrollable mega-complex. And then there's the one they are calling the Perry Sound Siege, an out-of-control blaze just 200 kilometers north of the city limits, burning in forests dried to a crisp by a 2-month-long drought. These aren't just fires, they are smoke factories. And for the last 36 hours, the prevailing winds have turned them into a series of exhaust vents, all aimed directly at the most populated urban area in Canada. 6 million people breathing in the ghost of 1 million hectares of incinerated trees. But to understand what's truly happening, to grasp why this summer is different, you have to realize that these fires didn't just start last week. Some of them never stopped burning from last year. This is the phenomenon that scientists have a chillingly appropriate name for. Zombie fires. Overwintering fires. Blazes from the record-smashing season of 2026 that were so intense, so deeply rooted, they didn't extinguish in the fall. They burrowed down. They went deep into the peat, into the duff layer of the forest floor, where they smoldered for months under meters of insulating snow. All winter, while the province was frozen, they were alive, waiting, and when the snowpack melted, weeks earlier than average, they clawed their way back to the surface and exploded. They were not reborn. They were reanimated. They came back with a vengeance, already established, already deep in the ground where air tankers and water bombers struggle to reach. That's the first thing you need to understand. The firefighting effort was behind before the season even officially began. They weren't fighting new sparks from lightning strikes. They were fighting the ghosts of last year's catastrophe. And these ghosts are bigger, faster, and far more stubborn than anything they've prepared for. That's the first open question the authorities aren't fully answering. How can you possibly contain a fire that never truly died? The answer is, you can't. You can only steer it, or get out of its way. We're seeing the consequences of that failure in the skies over Toronto right now. The city is beginning to seize up. The Toronto District School Board has just mandated all recess and outdoor activities be moved indoors. The Blue Jays game for tonight has been postponed, not because of rain, but because the air itself is now a physical hazard to the players. On the highways, the 401 and the Don Valley Parkway, the afternoon haze has reduced visibility to the point of danger, forcing digital signs to flash warnings usually reserved for blinding fog or blizzards. Reduced visibility due to smoke, they read. It feels biblical. Apocalyptic. A run on air purifiers has emptied the shelves of every Canadian Tire and Home Depot from Scarborough to Brampton. Online, N95 masks, the relic of a different kind of crisis, are sold out or being price gouged into absurdity. This is the visible, tangible response. But the real danger is invisible. It's what's hiding inside that ochre haze. This brings us to the second, more critical piece of information that is being systematically downplayed. It's that number your government-issued phone alert conveniently omits. Environment Canada reports the Air Quality Health Index, or the AQI. It's a simplified scale from 1 to 10 plus. It's designed to be simple, easy to grasp. Today, Toronto hit 10 plus. Very high risk. The scale is maxed out. But this number is a composite. It's a blend of different pollutants, ground level ozone, nitrogen dioxide, and particulate matter. It's a useful generalization, but it's also a dangerous oversimplification. Because in a wildfire smoke event, one of those components matters infinitely more than all the others. And the AQI scale simply does not have the language to describe the sheer magnitude of what is happening. The number you need to know is the concentration of PM2.5. Particulate matter measuring 2.5 micrometers or less. How small is that? A single human hair is about 70 micrometers in diameter. These particles are 30 times smaller. You cannot see them. You cannot feel them. When you breathe them in, your lungs can't filter them out. They are so microscopic they pass directly through the alveolar sacs in your lungs and enter your bloodstream. Once they are in your blood, they are everywhere. They are in your heart, your liver, your brain. These are not just simple particles of soot. They are complex chemical delivery systems. They are tiny jagged spheres of carbon coated in a toxic film of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, benzene, formaldehyde, and acrolein. They are the concentrated essence of everything that was once a forest, aerosolized and shot into the sky. And when they get into your bloodstream, they trigger an immediate systemic inflammatory response. Your body treats each particle as a foreign invader. This inflammation puts immense strain on your cardiovascular system. It can constrict blood vessels, raise blood pressure, and destabilize atherosclerotic plaques in your arteries, potentially triggering a heart attack or a stroke. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, where studies are now showing it can cause neuroinflammation, linked to cognitive decline and an increased risk of dementia. This isn't a cough. It's not itchy eyes. This is a direct cellular-level assault on your entire body. So what is the PM2.5 number in Toronto right now? The public-facing government websites won't show you directly. You have to dig. You have to go to the independent networks, the citizen-run sensors, the international air quality trackers that don't soften the data for public consumption. As of 4 p.m. Eastern Time, the downtown Toronto core is registering a PM2.5 concentration of over 350 micrograms per cubic meter. Let me put that in perspective for you. The World Health Organization's safety guideline for 24-hour exposure is 15. 15. Toronto is currently sitting at more than 23 times the recommended global safety limit. It's an air quality level comparable to the worst days in New Delhi or Beijing. But this isn't a chronic industrial pollution problem that has built up over decades. This is an acute meteorological event that has descended on a city utterly unprepared for it, in a country that prides itself on its clean air. That number, 350, is the truth of this smoke. The 10 plus on the AQI scale is a polite fiction, a way of saying it's bad without having to quantify the horror. Because how do you tell 6 million people that the very air they need to survive has become a poison? How do you explain that every breath you take outside is delivering a payload of microscopic toxins directly into your vital organs? You don't. You tell them to reschedule outdoor activities and listen to your body. You obscure the terrifying specificity of the threat behind a user-friendly, color-coded chart. You create a system that is designed to inform, but functions to placate. The real story is in the missing data point. The silence around the PM2.5 number is not an accident. It's a strategy. It's a choice to manage panic instead of communicating risk. And that choice has consequences. It leaves the most vulnerable, the elderly, children, people with asthma, heart conditions, or diabetes, thinking that a little discomfort is the only risk. It hides the long-term damage that is being done, breath by breath, to an entire population. People think they're just dealing with a hazy day, when they are in fact weathering a mass toxicological event. And the worst part? It's just getting started. The weather forecast for the next 72 hours shows something terrifying. A stationary high-pressure system is locking into place over Quebec. This will create what meteorologists call a blocking pattern. The winds, which have been variable, are about to lock into a steady, unchanging flow out of the north-northwest. A direct, uninterrupted fire hose of smoke connecting the Parry Sound Siege and the Sudbury megacomplex to the Golden Horseshoe. The smoke isn't going to just pass over. It's going to settle. It's going to build up, layer upon layer, with no clean marine air from Lake Ontario to flush it out. The alerts tell you the smoke is here. The maps show you where the fires are. But the models, the ones that predict where this all goes next, are showing a scenario that no one has dared to say out loud. What happens when the air quality in a major North American metropolis doesn't just hit hazardous levels for a few hours, but stays there? What happens when it remains at 20 times the WHO safety limit for 3 days straight, or 5, or 7? We are watching a live, involuntary human health experiment, and an entire city is the test subject. The fires are not the only crisis. The real crisis is in the air. And it's coming for everyone. The first thing you notice isn't the smell. It's the taste. A bitter, metallic film that coats the back of your throat, a taste you can't wash away with water. Then comes the headache, a dull, persistent throb behind the eyes that no amount of caffeine can touch. Your eyes burn, not like you've been crying, but like you've been staring into a campfire for hours. This isn't an occasional nuisance. This is the new baseline reality for millions of people. When the Air Quality Health Index, or AQI, screams past 10 plus, and the PM 2.5 concentration hits 250, 300, even 400 micrograms per cubic meter, the advice to limit outdoor activity becomes a dark joke. Because the outside is already inside. These particles, the infamous PM 2.5, are unimaginably small. 30 of them can line up across the width of a single human hair. This is why they are so dangerous. Your nose, your throat, your lungs' natural defense mechanisms are built to stop larger particles, like dust or pollen. But PM 2.5 particles are so fine they slip past those defenses, like ghosts. They travel deep into the alveoli, the delicate sacs in your lungs, where oxygen passes into your blood. And here is where the real damage begins. They don't just sit there, they are Trojan horses. They carry a payload of toxic chemicals directly into your bloodstream. The smoke from a boreal forest fire isn't just burnt wood, it's a complex chemical soup. It's benzene, a known carcinogen. It's formaldehyde, acrolein. It's polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, the same class of compounds found in cigarette smoke and coal tar. When these particles cross into your bloodstream, they trigger a system-wide inflammatory response. Your body treats each particle as an invader, launching an immune attack. But there are millions of invaders. Billions. This isn't a battle, it's a siege. And your own body's defenses become the weapon turned against you. The inflammation stiffens arteries. It destabilizes plaque. It makes the blood stickier, more prone to clotting. This is why, during major smoke events, emergency rooms don't just see a surge in asthma attacks. They see a surge in heart attacks. They see more strokes. They see more cardiac arrests. A 2021 study in the Journal of the American Heart Association found that exposure to even 1 day of heavy wildfire smoke was associated with a nearly 6% increase in out-of-hospital cardiac arrests. Now multiply that by a week, or 2 weeks. The elderly resident in a long-term care facility, the person with pre-existing heart disease, they are the first to feel this. Their bodies simply do not have the reserves to fight a war on 2 fronts. For them, a bad air day isn't an inconvenience. It can be a death sentence. And what about children? Their lungs are still developing. They breathe more air relative to their body weight than adults do. Their defenses are weaker. Every breath of this toxic air is shaping the very architecture of their respiratory systems, potentially leading to a lifetime of reduced lung function, of asthma, of chronic illness. We are scarring the lungs of an entire generation before they've even had a chance. The city issues alerts. They tell people to stay indoors, use an air purifier, go to a public library or a community center if you need clean air. It sounds reasonable. It sounds like a plan. But this advice exposes a brutal truth about who gets to breathe in a crisis. It's a solution for the privileged. What about the construction worker on the 50th floor of a new condo tower, breathing unfiltered air for 8 hours straight? Or the bike courier rushing an order through the orange haze, his lungs burning with every pedal stroke? Or the landscaper, the sanitation worker, the thousands of people whose jobs are outside, who have to choose between their health and a paycheck? For them, there is no escape. The economic reality of a city like Toronto means that a vast population of its essential workers are exposed, unprotected, and largely invisible. And the advice to stay inside assumes your inside is safe. For hundreds of thousands of Torontonians living in older apartment buildings, in basement units, in housing with leaky window frames and no central air, the inside is just a slightly less concentrated version of the outside. These are buildings designed to breathe, to leak. They were never meant to be sealed against an atmospheric assault. Without air conditioning, closing the windows on a hot summer day turns an apartment into an oven filled with smoke. You either bake or you choke. And what about air purifiers? A good HEPA filter can cost hundreds of dollars, plus the cost of replacement filters. For a family struggling to pay Toronto's astronomical rent, it's an impossible luxury. Clean air has become a commodity, and a large portion of the city simply cannot afford to buy it. This is the hard pivot point nobody wants to talk about. This climate disaster is also a crisis of inequality. The wealthy, in their sealed condos with multi-stage filtration systems, can ride out the smoke in comfort. They order in food, work from home, and breathe clean air. The poor, the working class, the marginalized are trapped. They inhabit the city's respiratory sacrifice zones. The smoke map is also a map of poverty. It's a map of social vulnerability. And that map shows a city starkly divided between those who can protect themselves and those who are left to gasp for air. This is the scenario playing out right now, silently. In apartments and on work sites across the Greater Toronto Area, the hospitals feel the first wave. Emergency department wait times, already catastrophic, will blow out. A system already on its knees after years of strain is now facing a mass casualty event where the casualties walk in one by one, short of breath, clutching their chests. But the system isn't designed for this. It's designed for car crashes and flu seasons, not for the entire population being slowly poisoned by the air itself. Every available respirologist is already working overtime. There aren't enough ventilators for a sudden, massive surge in acute respiratory distress syndrome. We're not talking about a hypothetical. We are talking about the documented. Observed reality in places like British Columbia and California during their worst fire seasons. The system bends, and then it breaks. Beyond the physical toll, there is the insidious psychological grind. The sun, when you can see it, is a pale blood-red disk in a sickly yellow sky. The world outside your window is drained of color, rendered in a dystopian sepia tone. The smell of smoke is a constant, primal reminder of danger. It triggers a deep, ancient anxiety. The feeling of being trapped, of the air itself being an enemy, is profoundly unsettling. This isn't just a few bad days. When it stretches into a week, then two, it creates a pervasive sense of dread, of hopelessness. This is solastalgia in real time, the distress caused by environmental change hitting you where you live. It's the anxiety of watching your world become actively hostile. It's the grief for blue skies you took for granted, and it wears people down, fraying nerves, shortening tempers, and contributing to a citywide mental health crisis that stacks on top of the physical one. And even when the smoke clears, the damage remains. This is the part that gets lost in the breaking news cycle. The particles you breathe in today don't all get breathed out tomorrow. Some of them stay. The carcinogens lodge in your tissues. The inflammation leaves scars. Studies on firefighters have long shown elevated risks of cancer and cardiovascular disease. Now, we're giving entire urban populations a dose of that same exposure. Not for a few shifts, but for weeks on end, year after year, we are running a terrifying, uncontrolled experiment on the long-term health of millions, and the results will only become clear in the cancer wards and cardiology units of the 2030s and 2040s. So, while the city suffocates, fixated on the Aki number, on the color of the sky. The source of the problem continues its relentless advance. The massive fire complexes in northern Ontario, the ones generating this smog, are not standing still. They are burning through a boreal forest that has been dried to a crisp by record heat and prolonged drought. They are creating their own weather systems, pyrocumulonimbus clouds that generate lightning, starting new fires miles ahead of the main front. They are advancing south, slowly but unstoppably. The immediate crisis is the air. But staring at the smoke map, the one showing PM 2.5 concentrations, is like looking at the shadow of the wolf. The real question is, where is the wolf itself? How far away are the flames, and which way is the wind blowing tomorrow? The wolf is at the door of the north, not the one from storybooks. This one is 300 kilometers wide and breathes smoke. On the maps used by the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, it isn't one wolf, but dozens. They call them fires of note. They are given designations like Cochrane 17 or Timmins 28. Clinical, unassuming names for monsters of combustion. For the past 2 weeks, the largest of these, the Abitibi Megacomplex, a merger of 3 formerly separate fires, has been chewing through the jack pine and black spruce forests south of James Bay at a rate that defies containment. It's not moving like a normal fire. It's creating its own weather. Pyrocumulonimbus clouds, thunderheads born from heat, are shooting smoke 12 kilometers into the stratosphere while simultaneously peppering the ground with lightning strikes, starting new children fires 20. 30 kilometers ahead of the main front. The line on the map isn't a line. It's a shotgun blast. How far away is that from Toronto? The raw distance is still hundreds of kilometers. A comfort. A deceptively large number that allows officials to speak of buffers and containment strategies. They talk about the Canadian Shield, the vast expanse of Precambrian rock and scattered lakes that separates the dense boreal forest from the farmland and cities of the south. It's supposed to be a fire break, written into the geology of the continent itself. A barrier. But this year, the barrier is broken. The shield is covered in forest, too. A different kind. Yes, less dense in places. But after months of level 3 drought, after a winter with a snowpack 60% below average, that forest is just as flammable. The lakes that are supposed to act as natural moats, many are at historic lows. The rivers, shrunken, the swamps and wetlands that would typically arrest a ground fire's advance, are dry, peaty soil that can now smolder for weeks, carrying the fire underground, only for it to re-emerge unpredictably on the other side of a highway, behind a crew that thought they had secured a line. The shield isn't a wall, it is a sieve, and the fire is pouring through it. So the wind. Tomorrow, it blows from the northwest. The day after, from the west-northwest. For the next 10 days, the long-range forecast shows an unyielding, high-pressure system parked over the Hudson Bay, funneling hot, dry, continental air south, directly south, over the fire zones and straight down the pipe towards the Golden Horseshoe. It is the perfect engine for disaster. This meteorological setup doesn't just push the smoke, it pushes the fire. It drops humidity levels to the single digits, curing the unburnt forest ahead of the flames into perfect kindling. It turns a burning ember, a tiny spark carried aloft by the fire's own convective column, into a viable threat. An ember the size of a thumbnail can travel for kilometers on a wind like that. It lands in a bed of dry pine needles in a suburban backyard in Barrie, in the cedar-shingled roof of a cottage in Muskoka, in the parched grass alongside Highway 400. That's how the jump happens, not as a solid wall of flame, but as 1,000 scattered points of ignition. A disease that spreads through the air. And this is where the real map nobody wants to look at comes into focus. It's not the Aki map showing the smoke. We're all glued to that one already. The real map is generated by a program called Farsight, the Fire Area Simulator. It's a predictive modeling tool used by fire behavior analysts. It takes the current fire perimeter, the fuel types, the topography, the weather forecast, and it runs thousands of simulations. It doesn't show you where the fire is. It shows you where it could be in 24 hours. in 48 hours, in 72. It paints the landscape in probabilities. Green is safe, yellow, low probability of ignition, orange is moderate, red is high. As of this morning, for the first time, the red is touching the northern edge of the Greater Toronto Area, not the city core. Not yet, but it is lapping at the edges of the wildland-urban interface, the WE. That's the zone where human development pushes up against flammable wilderness. In Ontario, that's places like Vaughan, Newmarket, Aurora. It's the multi-million-dollar homes backing onto conservation ravines. It's the subdivisions built right into what used to be forest. The red on the map is covering the Holland Marsh, one of Canada's most fertile agricultural zones, a tinderbox of dry, organic soil. It's following the Oak Ridges Moraine, a green corridor that acts as a natural highway for fire, straight into the heart of the most densely populated part of the country. This isn't theory. This has a name. It's called a Type 6, or WE conflagration. California knows it. British Columbia has learned it the hard way in Kelowna and Lytton. Australia lives in fear of it. It's the scenario where a wildfire stops being a forest management problem and becomes a city-wide catastrophe. The emergency plans for Toronto, for York Region, for Peel, they are built for ice storms that take out the power for a week. They are built for localized flooding from the Don River. They are built for a G7 summit security lockdown. They are not, in any meaningful way, built for the simultaneous evacuation of 1 million people northbound on 3 major highways, while a fire front potentially 50 kilometers wide, driven by 60 kilometer per hour winds, bears down on them. The plan doesn't exist. Because the scenario was considered impossible, the kind of thing that happens elsewhere. Look at the resources. Ontario has a fleet of CL-415 water bombers, the best in the world. But there are only so many of them. Right now, they are stretched thin, protecting critical infrastructure far to the north, power transformer stations, remote First Nations communities, pulp and paper mills. They are performing triage on a continental scale. The number of trained, certified wildland firefighting crews is finite. These are not municipal firefighters who can hook up to a hydrant. These are specialized teams that have been on the line for 30 days straight, eating smoke and sleeping in tents. They are exhausted. And now, you're asking them to defend a suburban environment, a labyrinth of cul-de-sacs, wooden fences, and propane tanks, where every house is fuel. It's the least defensible terrain imaginable. The math simply does not work. You can't put a water bomber over every backyard. You can't assign a 4-person crew to every street. At a certain point, the strategy shifts from suppression to evacuation. And the only thing more difficult than fighting a fire of this magnitude is getting 1 million people to leave their homes ahead of it. The economic fallout is already beginning, even if the flames are still 100 kilometers away. That power you use to charge your phone in your filtered air condo in downtown Toronto, a significant portion of it comes down the corridors from massive hydroelectric projects in the James Bay region. Those corridors are hundreds of kilometers long, cutting through the heart of the fire zone. A single down transmission line, one tower weakened by heat, could trip a circuit that cascades through the grid, plunging millions into darkness during a heat wave and an air quality crisis. The CN and CP rail lines, the primary arteries for moving goods across the country, run through the same high-risk zones. A warped track, a burned-out bridge, it severs the nation's supply chain. This is the fragility that was always there, hidden in plain sight. The entire economic model of Southern Ontario is built on the assumption that the North is a stable, predictable resource base. That assumption is currently on fire. The insurance industry knows this. They are running their own models, and they're looking at the potential for insured losses that would make a hurricane look like a rounding error. Forget $2 billion in damages. We are now in the territory of tens, maybe hundreds of billions. A hit the national economy simply cannot absorb. And so, we are left staring at the screen, not just the smoke map, but the live fire map from the Canadian Wildland Fire Information System, watching the red polygons grow. We track the wind speed and direction on another app. We check the flight trackers to see where the water bombers are, a desperate form of digital birdwatching. The conversation has shifted. 2 weeks ago, it was about the smell, the inconvenience. the canceled patio plans. Last week, it was about public health, N95 masks, and the vulnerability of the elderly and asthmatic. This week, a new vocabulary is entering the conversation in the coffee shops of North York and the boardrooms on Bay Street. Words like defensible space, ember protection, evacuation route. The crisis is migrating south, not just as smoke, but as an idea. The idea that the buffer is gone, that the fire is no longer a distant problem on the news. It's a potential reality measured in hours and kilometers. This is the end of an old story Canada has told itself. The story of endless, untamable nature held safely at bay. The story of cities as sanctuaries, separate from the wild. The truth, laid bare by the satellite images and the predictive models, is that there is no separation. There is only a continuum of risk. The boreal forest is a system evolved with fire. It needs fire to regenerate. But it is not meant to burn like this. Not this hot, not this fast, not this far south. We have loaded the dice for a century. With climate change warming the north at twice the global average, with fire suppression policies that allowed fuel to build up for decades, with development patterns that push neighborhoods into the woods without a second thought. We built a perfect continental-scale bonfire. Now, someone has lit the match, and the wind is blowing towards the fireworks factory. The smoke choking Toronto is a message. It's the final, desperate warning shot from a climate system that has been pushed past its breaking point. Remember the opening? The hazy sunrise, the orange glow that looked like a filter. The mistaken belief that it was just fog? That was the shadow. The real thing is coming. And the map nobody wants to see, the one with the flames licking at the edge of the city, isn't a fantasy. It's a forecast. A destination we are now arriving at, hour